Shubham, do we need any milk for anything this morning, first thing? Okay. I'll have to call the supplier and see how far the milk is, because I have 10 bottles more mangai. Where's my phone? Do you know the silver plate is? Hey Scott, it's Vaibhav from Chaat Street. How are you today? I grew up in a household where my dad was kind of mostly traveling, and me and my brother, we were both raised by the women in the family. So we quite early on, we got into this habit of cooking for ourselves and, just helping out our mum in the kitchen, which usually was not the case in a usual, Indian household. It is quite encouraging, and I think although understanding that how hard this industry is, we constantly work for only one reward, and that is, when someone's happy or you've touched their soul, or, someone says things like, oh, this reminds me of my mum's cooking, or, of their childhood, and that's essentially why we work ridiculous amounts of hours, really. It's a very typical of almost all cuisines to have a char grill in their culture, when it comes to food, and in Kashmir it is of a huge cultural importance. In Kashmir they call it sigri, or the dishes that you prepare over it. There are multiple things that they make, and the idea of having this on was to kind of just have those dishes here available here, because historically I don't think a lot of dishes from north of India, besides the one that we usually see, probably the butter chicken and the dishes that are probably cooked in a kadhai, they've mostly not been available globally. Second. Hey Scott, it's Vaibhav. How are you? Today was just another day for Waza. We started at 9 this morning, started preparing things that are prepared every day. Started off with the malu, which are the potatoes. Takes a while to cook, so we kind of just started off early on. And we fried them for at least 40 minutes.
What?
The oil seeps in, so essentially what it does, it creates this micro pathway for flavors to go in. The potatoes kind of rattle, and because of that rattling, it kind of finds these micro pathways into the center of the potato, and it goes. And now we cook it until the sauce has kind of settled, and then it's boiled for a few hours, and the idea is to kind of permeate this sauce, this liquid, into the potatoes. And when you slice into it, there's spice in the potato rather than just on the exterior. So when you're making paneer, depending on the firmness, so there are two things that are very essential. So a ratio of acid that goes in, that will decide how quickly or how slowly the milk curds form.
What was your first memory of making paneer?
A failure. I was quite young, but I thought by the looks of it, it looked easy. But it was, in the end, I figured that there's a lot more technique involved in making paneer. I mean, at this stage, if you take that out, it is going to have a very mozzarella kind of a texture. So I'm now just kind of using the heat to squeeze the moisture out of the paneer, just to kind of make it a bit firmer. So paneer actually is not, it never was an Indian dish. It was something that was taught to the Indians by the Portuguese, because they would eat cheese and Indians would call it chena. That was the original name of paneer. Eventually it became a huge part of the Indian dining vernacular because of a lot of vegetarianism being prominently followed in India. So also this bag has to have a linen muslin cloth for it. I remember we made ricotta once, and yeah, that kind of changed things for me a bit. So we've got a few things going today. Yeah, we're making the bagels today. Cook the eggplant. We have to make the malu. We have to cook the lamb flaps. Yeah, the lamb ribs essentially. We have to make the rice pudding, and we have to make the burnt eggplant as well. Shubham, do we have rice? Bags of rice? When you don't like doing something, you gravitate towards things that give you some sense of comfort. And a lot of times people take support of alcohol, drugs. For me, my drug was culinary arts. And with the buzit wangun, which was the eggplant, the smoked eggplant, the char grill rather, we take off the skin, although we keep some of it on purpose on the eggplant, just to add a bit more smokiness to the eggplant. And we're trying to just get rid of the skin. Actually, it's very, very close to my heart, because it was something that I remember when we were young. My mum did not have a lot of time in the mornings to actually make us fancy breakfasts. And then we add the roasted chickpeas in. So what roasted chickpeas essentially do is just retain the moisture. It doesn't release water, because eggplant by default is a very watery kind of a vegetable, so it will prevent it from splitting water from the main dish, and that's where all the flavor is. So we would always have a piece of bread and something with it, and we got so bored of it. So the only two other things that she would add into our lunchbox to break that monotony of the usual bread, we would either have the smoked eggplant or instant noodles. And I remember when I broke the news that I was going to be a chef, I wanted to study culinary arts. My dad was really, really annoyed and mad. He thought that it would bring shame to the family because the entire family had an academic background. It almost felt to them that I was running away from academia. In the end, I decided to kind of, hold on to my ground and make my decision that I want to be a chef, and I've moved to New Zealand. We have to heat up yogurt and make it boil without splitting it. So that's why it is kind of tricky. And then we cook the lamb in it. Yes, so lamb yakhni is exactly as the eggplant, but it is a lot more brothier. And again, the idea is the lamb also adds flavor into the sauce. The lamb's coming out really nice. So all it needs are just dried mint leaves once it's almost finished. And for some strange reason, the acidity just elevates, turns that into a whole new experience. So next we're making, it's a rice-based dish it's actually just steamed rice essentially. It's called tahat. Rice has a huge cultural importance in Kashmir. It is traditionally cooked over weddings or mostly at birthdays. So you'd wake up in the morning, you pray. This is given to gods as an offering. So we use any type of a variety of short grain rice. We're using jasmine. It is kind of more aromatic. So it's just turmeric into rice. Putting some salt in. I grew up on it and is of course a great combination with the kind of dishes that we have, and primarily the meat-based dishes, which are Rogan Josh, Kalia and Yakhni. Well, Chaat literally means to lick. So Chaat originated in New Delhi in India, and it was when the English arrived in India. All these royal chefs who were cooking for the Mughals, they were disbanded. Of course, the English had defeated the Mughals, and they had to, of course, now fend for themselves. They started using water from a river nearby, and turned out that that water was contaminated, and people would start falling sick. So the only way to actually have that, turn that water consumable was to add so much salt into it, so much sodium that people could consume it, and it would kill the bacteria in the water. And after people would have finished eating their meals, they would have residual salt on their hands, so they'd kind of just lick it off. And yeah, that's how the name Chaat kind of became a blanket term used for all street foods in India. So next we're making one of the drinks that is called kahwa. It's a traditional Kashmiri tea. It also has Middle Eastern roots, and it's traditionally served in a copper kettle like this. It's essentially a concentric cylinder where you put embers in the center, which we are going to do now, and we put tea on the side. So it essentially keeps the drink hot. Kashmiri food has always been a very spice-based menu. You would notice that majority of the ingredients that we use, they have a neutral flavor profile. And the idea is to kind of use something that would incorporate whatever you put into it and takes on the identity of the spices that have gone into it. For example, if you compare a steak, it essentially is just a piece of meat with salt and pepper, so it doesn't really take on anything. But paneer, on the other hand, is a neutral tasting ingredient and just takes on the spices that you put into it, and that's what the menu also focuses on. If you notice, we've mentioned ginger powder, fennel powder, and those are the kind of key elements, the heroes of that dish that actually enhance the entire identity and the flavor profile of the dish. So Sikh tuj is also very common. It is actually a street food in Kashmir, and the idea is to have it with multiple chutneys, so that's traditionally what people do. You use your hand. Indian food is supposed to be very, very tactile, so you pull the piece out, pick the chutney with it and have it with your fingers. And the same goes with the kosher kebab, which are also very, very popular. They're quite a turmeric-heavy meat mince. That's what the primary flavor that comes through. And of course, red chilies and ginger and fennel. My name is Vaibhav, Vishen, and we are currently at Chaat Street, and the space is actually turned into a space called Waza for the period of Wellington On played this year. 2 chaman, 1 sikh tuj, 1 haq, 3 kulcha, 2 tilvur. So Waza is something that's very close to my heart. It's a term used for a chef in Kashmiri language. These are chefs who are skilled and trained to cook this particular type of cuisine called Wazwan. An identity as a Waza would be a great name for this event because we are representing Kashmir and the food which actually is traditionally served at weddings. That's daikon chutney. It's a very popular dish in Kashmir. And this is the walnut chutney called the doon chutney. Hafaron tilvur. Okay. All right, new order, 1 damalu, 1 sirchot, 1 buzit wangun, 1 mats. There are a lot of people who have inspired me to be chefs. Primarily, it would be from my family. It would be my mum who actually inspired me to cook. She just made cooking look so easy and without an agenda or without any incentive, that she would cook with so much love. As a restaurant owner or as a chef, if you get the sense of cooking without an intention, your food's always going to be tasty.